the next thing that we were going to talk about is a story that came out in the middle of the week, which I'm sure you all saw, which is that Dame Margaret Hodge is stepping down as an MP after 27 years in Parliament. This got lots of coverage in the media, and there were tributes to her from people like Keir Starmer and everyone around him. But what do we know about Margaret Hodge? Well, we've got on the call, we've got someone who knows. We've got two people who've got some information about Margaret Hodge. One of whom is Andrew Feinstein. Are you there, Andrew?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Thank you for coming on. Good to see you. First time I've spoken to you live on this show. Now, Margaret Hodge, we spoke before, and you mentioned something about Margaret Hodge and her links with South Africa in some way, because you were an ANC MP in South Africa under Mandela. What is it about Margaret Hodge that's not being put out there on the media? Because they're doing lots of tributes to her. They don't seem to have mentioned this point that you made.
It's an extraordinary thing. Various people tried to get the story I'm about to tell you into the British media, and went first, unsurprisingly, to The Guardian, who sat on this story for months, and I discovered subsequently didn't run the story because they regard Margaret Hodge as what they call a friend of the house. And Margaret Hodge has used her considerable political clout to effectively try and suppress the story. So let me tell you the story. The backstory to this is that, as I'm sure everybody on this call knows, Margaret Hodge called Jeremy Corbyn to his face, if I'm correct, an effing racist and an anti-Semite. In addition to which, a few years before, she'd given an interview to the New Statesman magazine that used to be of the left. I'm not sure how you would describe it today, but it certainly isn't of the left anymore, in which she was asked for her proudest political moment. And she described that as the day that Nelson Mandela was released from prison because of her lifelong involvement in the international anti-apartheid struggle. Now, there was a group in South Africa, an extraordinary investigative research civil society group called Open Secrets. And the head of Open Secrets had written a brilliant book called Apartheid, Guns and Money, about all of those countries in Europe, obviously the UK, the US, but even countries like Russia and China, who had given support to the apartheid regime in South Africa through providing oil, through providing weapons, through providing diplomatic support, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a brilliantly researched book and a terrifying book when we realize how many countries were complicit in the system of apartheid in South Africa. And of course, it reminds us of the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories and in Israel today, except people seem to be more overt about that support, whereas their support of apartheid South Africa was much more covert. But Henny van Vuren, the author of the book, did an enormous amount of archival research for the book over many, many years. And during that archival research, he came across documents that showed that Margaret Hodge's family company, now Hodge's family run a company that acts as agents in the selling of iron and steel. And Hodge herself was one of the most influential board members of the company. At the time, she and her brother were the two most important board members and the biggest shareholders in this family company. Now, this would be fairly immaterial, except that this family company had one of its most profitable relationships on the planet with the South African apartheid state, for whom they used to sell iron and steel around the world. And one of their most profitable contracts throughout the decade of the 1980s was selling apartheid iron and steel to the Pinochet dictatorship in Chile. And in fact, as a consequence of these actions, the family company, from which Margaret Hodge receives dividends on a regular basis, or did while it was still in existence, worth millions, if not tens of millions of pounds, this company was actually placed by the international anti-apartheid movement during the struggle against apartheid South Africa on its list of companies to boycott because of its complicity with the apartheid South African state. Now, this is a story that Open Secrets published in South Africa's premier media outlet, an outlet called the Daily Maverick, that was taken to The Guardian. And The Guardian sat on the story for over 3 months before deciding they wouldn't publish it just before Christmas of the year that the story came out. So they effectively tried to stop the story from being published in the United Kingdom. When it became clear that Open Secrets were running this story, they contacted Margaret Hodge's office for the right of reply. Hodge's office tried to intimidate them to not publish the story, threatened legal action, and Open Secrets kept on saying to her office, well, send us information, evidence, or documents that contradict the archival documents on which the story is based. And of course, no such contradiction, no such alternative evidence was forthcoming. And once the story was published in South Africa, of course, there was no legal action because the archival documents, which I've actually had sight of, make absolutely clear the complicity of the Hodge family company with the apartheid state in South Africa. And this is a story that should be all over the United Kingdom media if we had a functional media in a functional democracy, which very sadly we don't, because in the United Kingdom, like in the United States, what we have is the best democracy money can buy.
Wow. Well, thank you, Andrew. That's a very interesting information. That, as you say, no one's publishing it, so we'll put it out there on YouTube and see if we get in trouble. Thank you, Andrew. And also speaking a tribute to Margaret Hodge. As a tribute to Margaret Hodge and his retirement, upcoming retirement, we've got David Rosenberg, who's got some another historical information, some more information about her that we're all interested to hear. David, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, great, and got a good picture as well. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, there's two things really I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about Margaret Hodge embarking in particularly the years 2006 to 2010. 2006 was the local council elections where the BNP went from nothing to having 12 councillors overnight. And those councillors embarking in Dagenham were spread between Margaret Hodge's constituency and John Cruddis's constituency. 9 of the 12 were in Hodge's constituency. And basically that was the neglect that Margaret Hodge and had in that constituency to the threat of the BNP. But it was kind of worse than that, because in the run-up to the 2006 local elections, she told the Sunday Telegraph in an interview that 8 out of 10 white working class people were thinking of voting BNP. And this was manna from heaven for the BNP. The BNP know that they've got support for some of their ideas among a section of the people in that area. They've long had a base in Barking and Dagenham. But the people who would vote for them are often, they think, what's the point in a first past the post election? Labour will always win here. And this was manna from heaven for the BNP, because, you know, what Margaret Hodge said in that interview, she said they see Black and ethnic minority communities moving in and they are angry. And after that, the BNP leader in the area, Richard Barnbrook, actually sent her flowers, 10 flowers, to thank her for her intervention. And those 10 flowers, and I think people have mentioned it also in the chat, they had 8 white lilies in them, because it was that 8 out of 10. Even worse in a way was her intervention a year later. Her way of trying to win those BNP voters back was to pander to those racist arguments in a classic Blairite triangulation. She advocated a local housing policy that privileged, and I quote, the legitimate sense of entitlement felt by Indigenous families over, quote, the legitimate needs demonstrated by new migrants. And that was very strongly criticized by the Refugee Council, a host of anti-racist organizations as well. And even a very outspoken denunciation by Alan Johnson on Question Time, who accused her of using the language of the BNP. Hodge is not the anti-racist champion she puts herself over as, and certainly not someone who should feel entitled to casually throw racism at others. And that, in a way, is the second point I wanted to come on to, which was her attack on Jeremy Corbyn, where she called him an anti-Semitic racist. Those close by claim she used the F word. She denies this. She was reported to the party by an MP who witnessed it. And when Hodge received a notice about that complaint, she said in a radio interview that she understood what it felt like to be a Jew in Germany in the 1930s. It felt as if they were coming for me. My dad used to say when I was a child, you've got to keep a packed suitcase at the door. And to me, that was the most terrible, casual trivialization of the Holocaust. I'm involved with Holocaust education. I'm part of the Unite Against Fascism annual trips to Auschwitz and Krakow, where we talk about the horrifying details and show people about the horrifying details of what happened during the Holocaust and make the connections between anti-Semitism then and real anti-Semitism now. I've met a lot of Holocaust survivors, unfortunately no longer with us over the decades, and I can't think of any who would, well, all the ones I know would be so angry at the trivialization of that. And so, you know, I feel very strongly about it. And I also feel for Jeremy Corbyn, because when we go on those trips to Auschwitz, which are the main participants are trade unionists and anti-racist activists, we get a message from Jeremy Corbyn, which we read out to the participants on the opening night. And I remember particularly the one he gave in the middle of the general election campaign 2019, and he sent a video message and he told participants of the horror that they would encounter when they visit Auschwitz. And he was talking from his own experience of visits to Holocaust memorials, memorial sites in Poland, Romania, and Czech Republic. You know, he knew what he was talking about. And to think that, you know, he's the one that is being accused of being a racist, anti-Semite, and the timing of it as well. It was in the very week in July 2018 when even YouGov polls put Labour at their highest lead over the Tories since the 2017 election, and that was a lead over the party of the hostile environment. Yeah, and this is the moment that Hodge was pushing this. So I'm not at all displeased that she's stepping down, and I think it's good news for the people of Barking. I wouldn't say that who know her, I wouldn't say they know her well. She has never lived in the constituency or anywhere near the constituency in the decades that she's been the MP there.
Well, thank you, David, and thank you, Andrew, for coming on.